everyone, Dana here. I'm an American, so going back to America is literally going home, going back to where I'm from. So what could possibly be the big deal? Well, sometimes it's just not as smooth and seamless as it may sound like it would be to go home. Sometimes that home changes while you're gone, or you change too, and then when you get home, it's different. You're different. The first few times that I went back to the US after moving to Europe did feel like going home again. Sure, there were a few bits of reverse culture shock here and there, shock at the big cars and the big highways, surprised to see temperatures in Fahrenheit again, but mostly small stuff like this that kind of rubbed off within a few days of being back in the US. But the longer that I lived here in Europe, the more distance grew between me and the US. Because of course, like I said, I changed some while living here in Europe, and the US changed some. But for a couple of years, I think I was kind of buffered from this change because my parents actually moved to Colorado, where I had never been before and didn't have any friends, which meant that when I did go back home, I was now going to Colorado, and I basically spent the whole time with my parents. So it was kind of like being in a bit of a bubble. I was able to go back to the US for a few years without really ever feeling that shift because I just hung out with my parents the whole time. But then after 6 years of living in Europe, one of my best friends growing up got married in Florida. And so after years of not being back to Florida, it was time for me to fly back to South Florida and kind of spend time with people in the US who weren't my parents for the first time in several years. I wasn't just invited as a guest at the wedding, but my friend also invited me to the hotel suite in the morning and the afternoon of the wedding to hang out with my friend and her whole wedding party. So her maid of honor and her bridesmaids, which was really awesome. I was really, really happy to get to be a part of her day like that. But it was a little overwhelming too. I did end up feeling kind of awkward at times. I was still really happy to be there to spend the day with her, but I definitely did feel a little bit like awkward Dana sometimes. So first of all, I had just flown into town the night before. And so I still had this kind of weird aura of jet lag around me. I don't know if anyone else gets this feeling when they're jet lagged, but for me, everything feels kind of surreal. And it's like it's still kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around the fact that just the day before, I woke up in Germany, and now, poof, suddenly 24 hours later, I'm hanging out in a hotel room with a bunch of Americans just minutes away from the beach. There's a pool outside, it's really hot weather, it's just this big change so quickly, and it kind of leaves me feeling kind of foggy. Okay, so there was that, but then I also just felt like everyone was talking so fast. The English was just so fast, and they were also using slang terms or new terms that I had never heard of. I mean, I know that language evolves over time, but I guess I just didn't realize how quickly the language or the terms that are used can change in a matter of years. I honestly, more than once that day, found myself sitting there having no idea what people were talking about. And I guess it wasn't just because of the language, but also because of what they were talking about. I mean, I was out of the loop. I knew about a lot of the big stuff that had been going on in the country, but apparently many of the little pop culture things, I just had no idea. People were referencing stories and jokes that I had never heard of. They were laughing, and I was just sitting there like, okay, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. But at least there was the music that we had in common, right? No. I listened to the hit music stations here in Germany, which do play a lot of American songs. But of course, they also play a lot of German songs and songs from other countries, which I also really love. And so there are just a lot of American songs that don't end up being played on the hit music stations in Germany. Not all the American songs get played here in Germany. So I didn't know most of them. A song would come on, and then all of a sudden the girl next to me is like screaming like, "Oh my God, this is the best song ever!" And then suddenly everyone was up and singing and yelling like, "They're the best song!" And I'm like smiling, but obviously not singing along because I've never heard this song before in my whole life. And so it was just such a crazy experience because, I mean, I was the same age as these people, one of whom had been my best friend for years, and I had known her for more than half my life. And yet, I didn't know the music. I didn't know the slang that she and everyone else was using, and I had no idea about the stories and pop culture references that they were talking about. Basically, I think that I felt how someone older might feel hanging out with a bunch of people in a younger generation. No idea what they're talking about or the music they're listening to, the slang they're using, except I was in their generation. I was the same age as these people. Just a few years before, I had been a part of it. And now I was on the outside kind of looking in. Or maybe not. Maybe I had always been a little bit awkward and moving abroad just magnified the experience. So my question for you is, have you ever experienced anything like this? Feeling a little bit awkward in the place you grew up? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And also a really big thank you so much to our patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to check out our Patreon page, you can find a link to that down in the description box below. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen. Shout out to my friend whose wedding I was at. I wish you and your husband all the best. I miss you and I hope to see you soon. Feeling awkward in the place that you at one point didn't feel awkward in. I was out of the loop. I was totally out of the loop. Like, I knew some stuff, but it was also a little overwhelming. And in the end, I did end up I felt kind of awkward. Hey everyone, I'm Donna. I've already got a blooper within 2 minutes, 2 seconds.